falls far away from the plains of Alaba, every elephant heads for the distant storm. As they get closer, excitement mounts in anticipation, for even the youngsters have learned what the rains herald: the end of long days of relentless sun, and the beginning of a new cycle. From the dry plains soon converge on this first storm of the season. Waterholes fill up in minutes and will sustain life for as long as they hold water. The elephants will be confined here until the rain spreads to new areas. Then they will disperse in their search for new vegetation. By evening, the clouds have built up. The rainy season has begun in earnest. Now that water is abundant, the matriarchs can lead their herds to waterholes far and wide that have been used for centuries by generations of elephants. For some, this is the first trip, but they will learn, and one day be able to lead their offspring to the same waterholes. Back on the plains of Alaba, the old elephant trails gleam in the moonlight like miniature canals. Below the flooded land, in the darkness of thousands of dung beetle brood chambers, there is no change, no indication of the startling event which is about to take place. The plains turn green almost overnight, and the hard, barren ground becomes soft and fertile. With the pounding rain, the soil soon becomes saturated, and water begins to seep down to the waiting beetles. The elephants feed ravenously on the new vegetation, but their inefficient digestive systems utilize only a small part of this food. The rest is deposited back on the ground almost unchanged, 6 hours after it was ripped up and eaten. After the first heavy rain, thousands upon thousands of beetles emerge from the soft soil to begin life above the ground. Heliocoprus dilloni, the giant among dung beetles, is irrevocably tied to that other giant, the elephant. For Heliocoprus dilloni feeds exclusively on the dung of elephants. The beetles immediately fly off in search of food. From the moment they leave the underground tombs, they are vulnerable to the attacks of many predators, including the spotted eagle owl. As the beetles fly overhead, the owls can easily locate them by their loud buzzing. Although the beetles fly well, a landing in the wrong spot is fatal. The front half of a 3-inch long beetle is heavily armored and is immensely strong. Even a large owl has difficulty in overpowering it. female owl is interested in what her mate has caught. During the rainy season, beetles form a large part of their diet, and she can see that the male has had a lucky strike, catching the largest and most nutritious of all the beetles. The male doesn't surrender his prize to the female. After all, it's the first one of the season. But later on, as part of their courtship behavior, he'll catch prey for her. The sound of another beetle overhead distracts the male, and the female is quick to seize her chance. The buzzing indicates that beetles are following a scent trail, and the owls are sure to strike again before the night is out. Only a few pickings are left for the ants. The beetles may have to fly far to find the elephants, but once they've picked up the scent of dung, they fly straight along the trail towards it. When beetles arrive overhead, they merely close their wings and crash to the ground. Then, righting themselves, they come running, and they come in many shapes and sizes. Solids, but their specially adapted mouth parts extract microorganisms which have come from the elephant, as well as nutrients from the partially digested grass. Half an hour after the first beetles arrive, there are literally thousands of them. The pile is rapidly being flattened and broken up as competition amongst the different species grows. Even the Helicoprus giants fight amongst themselves for possession of a particular place to feed. The ball-rolling scarabs, another species, get on with the business of rolling away to feed in safety elsewhere. This beetle to feed, its first meal ever above ground. 45 minutes after the first beetles arrived, the pile is well and truly flattened, and the scarabs are still rolling the balls away as fast as they can. After a scarab begins to fashion his ball, the trick is then to hang on to it long enough to complete it and roll it away to safety. With your head buried, it's not easy to watch your rear. Got it. And now away. The Helicoprus adopt a different strategy. After feeding for a short while on the surface, they go below and excavate small chambers into which they pull dung down and pack it tightly. This enables them to defend their food supply against the many thieves that surround them. This giant Helicoprus has already dug his hole and is well on the way to stocking it. The scarab finds the hole a convenient place to park his ball while he adds to it, but the giant his entrance clear. Once a Heliocoppus has provisioned his chamber, he has to defend the horde, even from his own kind. While most beetles get on with the arduous job of stocking their own chambers, there are those who think it easier to steal from others. If a thief doesn't eventually manage to oust the owner, there's a good chance he will lose out altogether, since all the food on the surface will soon be finished. Once the dung is safely stocked below, the beetles can feed quietly for the next few days, but they will then move off again in search of elephants and fresh food. Her specialized mouthparts operate like a system of rollers, squeezing and separating the liquid from the fibers. If there are only a few elephants around at the beginning of the rains, the beetles concentrate in large numbers on one pile. As many as 60 of the giants and 40,000 others compete for the same food. Late arrivals are still appearing. Maybe they've had to fly many miles after emerging from the ground in an area where there were no elephants. They're lucky to have made it, for they might have flown the wrong way altogether and found no trail to follow. By now, there are mostly inedible fibers left, and some beetles which have not stocked underground chambers leave in search of fresh supplies. A scarab latecomer makes no attempt to make a ball, and the last Heliocoppus beetles feed on the surface and make no efforts to go below. These beetles are probably too hungry and weak to fly on, so they have no option but to stay and find what they can on the surface. This is dangerous. The nocturnal civet cat has good hearing. It can easily locate a beetle when it lands nearby. From then on, the particular scent of the giant beetle leads the cat straight to it. These beetles form a large part of the civets' diet when they are available. At other times, it relies on a range of different foods: millipedes, eggs, birds and small mammals, even vegetation and fruit. It can go without food for several days, but it has also been known to eat 2 kilos in a sitting. That's a lot of beetles. With the coming of day, the beetles are still not safe. The ground hornbills are very keen beetle eaters. These turkey-sized birds live in family groups, led by the female, but cooperatively raising their one chick. He hasn't developed his adult coloration yet, but he is feeding himself. The chick, over the last 2 years, has learnt where to look for the biggest beetles. Even a giant is only an hors d'oeuvre for this bird. Only those beetles below will be safe. Each day, the elephants leave behind hundreds of tons of dung on the plains, and a beetle army of hundreds of thousands buries it, thereby playing an indispensable part in the fertilization of the soil. The giant dung beetles have played an important role in this recycling while they have been feeding, but their behavior is about to change. Since the beetles emerged from the ground 3 weeks ago, they have matured and are now ready to breed. The female digs a tunnel heading downwards below the pile, and she pushes the soil upwards to form a pyramid on the surface. The tunnel will lead to a chamber, which she will pack with food, just as she has done every few days since the rain began. But this time, she will not eat it. She will store it in preparation for breeding. From this moment on, all her efforts will be directed towards raising a family. She has a great shovel of a head called a clapius, with which she loosens the soil. Whilst her clapius carves out the soil ahead of her, her forefeet push the loosened soil under her body and out behind her. The next step is to bulldoze the soil upwards. It takes her 2 to 3 hours to excavate the storage chamber, and she does it alone, for as yet she hasn't been joined by her mate. She works quickly because the food supply above will be drying out in the sun and will soon become unusable. To move about 400 times her weight in soil before the chamber is big enough to hold all the food she will need for her young. That's equivalent to a person moving 2.5 tons of soil out of his back garden. A young superb starling is looking for beetles to eat, but this one is too big. It's the female's mate. He has arrived. The female immediately joins him on the surface and begins to break up the food into manageable bits in preparation for taking it down the tunnel. One method she uses to move the dung is to lie on her back and use her legs like a conveyor belt. The female pushes the food supply down the tunnel to the male, who packs it into the storage chamber. Push down, turn around, and up for more. She works without a break for hours. At least they don't have to fight off hundreds of other beetles. Most other species have already gone underground to breed. Many others of her own kind who are not breeding yet have moved on with the elephants. She's survived the many hazards above ground. She's dug a tunnel in the storage chamber, moving several hundred times her own weight in soil, then refilled it with